Processing Part 2 has materialized out of a lack of technical resources needed to continue my planned motion capture independent study, which is reflective of the subject of this piece itself, the lack of control I often felt throughout the processing of my trauma. I have created a sandbox where the world has become a space to discover critical incidents. I can repeatedly return to and try different interactions and test the outcomes without the fear of getting hurt. Trauma has caused me to dream vividly, where I test the water and learn which things are real and safe again. I have developed a space where I can playtest my own survival without having to literally fall asleep. I compare this space to that of Lizzie Elliott's in Altered Carbon, a woman whose consciousness is stuck in a virtual world, infinitely reliving her physical and sexual trauma. Trauma takes your world and turns it inside out. Nothing returns to the way things were previous to the trauma. Instead, the world is shaped differently with reference to this trauma, and your version of reality is forever changed. Featured in this space are oil paintings that I created while processing my trauma. The environment offered my paintings in new material form as well as an essence of time. This allowed my paintings to transcend from static works of art to dynamic objects in time. While it is not explicitly stated during the Unity experience, the paintings match up to critical moments of my trauma and its processing. By placing the paintings on objects and having them materialize in tandem with certain events in the Unity environment at particular moments in time, I am able to implicitly showcase what processing of the trauma occurred in my head while creating them. Furthermore, because these representations remain entirely abstract, I am able to easily tap into my subconscious thought where my trauma is held. While the work is backed by my computer-generated code, I am ultimately expressing the trauma authentically through a stream of artistic, dreamlike thought. This type of workflow gave space for post-reflection. I would often make without thinking, contrary to many formal coding practices. This would lead me to some powerful revelations. For example, in the early stages, the only furniture in the house was a clock and a thermostat, and I questioned these choices but continued the work anyhow. Later in the process, I assigned the skirt painting as a material to the clock and realized that, the skirt reminding me of my grandmother and owning a clock being made by my grandfather, the clock was a metaphor for the spiritual guide I felt throughout the processing of my trauma. Another example was that I used the thermostat to trigger the onset of the trauma, and I was unsure why. Upon changing the thermostat to a fireplace and assigning it the heart on a stick oil pastel piece as a material, I realized the object was really about heat and how it related to my trauma. I was then compelled to add a fire pit in the backyard and create a metaphor for opportunity and create more positive interactions in the experience as well. Going forward, I would also like to create more interactions in the backyard, including a garden. This self-reflective workflow became essential to the materialization of this process, as well as those aspects that can only be experienced from playing. That is to say, self-reflection was important for processing the trauma. The making of this piece was processing the trauma itself, and experiencing this piece is a glimpse at that process.
A growth. A growth on my finger, a growth in myself. A wart, an abscess, a ring that cut off circulation. Cut it off, take it off, replace it with another growth. A wart that won't go away. Green like the warts on the wicked witch's nose. That was me, the wicked witch. No, literally, in a third grade play. I made a lot of people laugh, and I learned a lot. My grandma loved it. She gave me lots of jewelry and rings. Rings are like growths on fingers. They are symbols for love and growth, and they stick out, and the bigger they are, the more they get in the way, but I love rings. I wear the same one every day. I never take it off. Then months later, I switch to a new one, like a wart. You finally get rid of it, and a new one comes. You try on a ring, it gets stuck. Cut it off. Am I going to have to cut it off? I don't wanna. Breathe. Okay, it came off. Try a different ring. Yes, that one is nice. Let's wear this one for the next few months.